Many years ago, I was in Maui working a tour of different comedy clubs throughout the islands. This particular case, it was at different hotels in their bars. Not good sound, not good lighting, not good acoustics, not much of a crowd, but there we were. I began to perform, and yes, there was a woman that was a little inebriated. She was saying mean and evil things. Get away, go out of here, you're not funny. In an inebriated voice. And let's face it, what can be more compelling than a drunken person to reason with? Well, I began to try to continue to perform, but this obnoxious woman got under my skin, and I actually said to her at one point, ma'am, just leave. Nobody wants you here. That's not something you're supposed to say to the audience. They paid a ticket to come see you, even if they were the jerk. But I told her to get lost. Go away. And you know what? Didn't happen that entire time. No time did she stand up, wobble towards me with her inebriation, and slap me in the face. You know why? Because there was a time when comedians were given the royal treatment. Not anymore, my friends. Not anymore. I take issue with that. Then again, this entire podcast takes issues. Matter of fact, it might be why I called it Brad Stine Has Issues. We're back, son. Well, we're here, folks. We are here. I am excited, as I always am. It is, in fact, the Brad Stine Has Issues, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time podcast. It is brought to you by Christian Podcast Central, that little hole-in-the-wall aggregate of Christian podcasts over in California. That's helping to put this on the air and allow me to survive and even maybe now and again have a little bite to eat. Wyatt, I don't know. Do you think the least they can give me a little snack, a Slim Jim, some jerky? What the heck? Marshmallows? Something, son.
Look, we have an industrial-sized, package of ramen. What more could you ask for?
We have an industrial-sized package of ramen. That's what my son said. Listen,
yes,
it's always exciting. It's always exciting to get on at 7 o'clock. My name is Brad Stine. I'm also known by the New Yorker in 2004 calling me God's comic, and I've used it ever since. This is Brad Stine Has Issues, where it is a combination of comedy, conservatism, Christianity, in a cacophony of clarity. Yes, folks, we are here, and we are picking up from where we left off. You know why I can't find my little scroll of people? I don't know why. I'm having a hard time finding
I see that. The scroll of people.
Oh, good. Well, I don't. So I don't know where they are or how I will find them. And because of that, I don't know how to look at people and say, hey, guys. So do you have any thoughts, any ideas for me?
Well, how about this?
Yeah?
Why don't you, as the first segment of this show, try to guess who the first person on the stream was?
Well, listen, I don't have access to my folks today, right now, so I'm going to just take a wild guess. Let me think. I'm going to use my sidekick. Nick Kress!
Yes,
oh,
it was. He has reclaimed his throne.
Has he reclaimed his throne? Because Nick Kress rules the world. And I want you to know something. You thought Bill Gates ruled the world because he can darken the sun and whatnot and come up with synthetic beef. And let's face it, if you run out of beef, you're going to go synthetic. Wyatt? Tell me about it. Would you go synthetic beef?
I've got beef with synthetic beef.
I'll bet you do. Who doesn't? You know, why can't I find my little video of the folks? Why?
Did you try looking at the little folks scroll wheel area?
I don't have one. I don't see where they are.
What do you mean you don't have? It came with your Facebook. Of course you have one.
But I can't find my people. Oh, here I am. Maybe this is it. Is this it over here? Sure. I'm trying to find you guys so I can say hi to... There they are. Found them. Hey, All right, let's see who's here today. Susan Frederica. I'm going to put on my glasses. Why? I'm old.
Oh, yeah, the hipster glasses, huh?
All right, Nick Crest is Newman. Come to South Carolina. I was, and you weren't there. So quit asking me to come places you won't show up to. That's what Arlen Helmuth said. Roger Riggle. I'll let someone agree before synthetic beef. Elizabeth Maria de Temple Jordan. She's here. Who else is here, Whitey boy? Let me look. Mike Nemo, right? Can't find him. Can't find Nemo. Let's see. Salmon Chum, he's here. Emily Smith said howdy. Tammy Lunsford. Elizabeth Marie. Oh, I already said her. Why am I having a hard time scrolling down? Whitey boy. Having a hard time scrolling down because I want to see everybody.
That's not a tech issue. That's just a you issue.
It is. Hey, guess who else is here? Dan Bratvoid. Jeff Hayes is here. Thanos would make a lousy stand-up comic. Does that make sense, Wyatt?
Thanos. I mean, if you've seen any Marvel movie the past 5 years, and otherwise, no.
Did you know Katani Kit Miller's here and she said hi?
No, I did not.
Yeah. Did you know Karen Boyd said, I've seen him in South Carolina twice. He'll be back. Yes, I will, Karen, and I know you'll be there because that's how you roll. Pamela Valencia is from Northern California, the only part of California that hasn't gone completely woke. Well, that is if you're in Fresno and not in the Bay Area. Well, they're all here and they're having fun. Wyatt, I'm excited to be with you guys tonight. You know, I have some things I wanted to talk to you guys about, but before I do, I want to say something about today's episode. It's a special one. As you guys know, those of you who've helped build the podcast from the ground up, we tried to add bells and whistles to make this more fun and more interesting for people. And one of the things that I've been telling you guys for quite some time is I want guests. I want to interview. That's what everybody does. And I want to bring them in here live because I have interesting friends and people here in Nashville that I'm sure could come out. And we're going to get to that. We just got to get another camera. But once we get that, we can have everybody on that. But right now, I can do it remotely. And tonight, we're having America's Constitution coach, Rick Green, my partner in crime, going to be on at 7:30. So listen to me. I want you guys to be able to ask questions about the Constitution. You know, he is an expert on it. He teaches. He has Patriot Academy. He teaches throughout the country where people can come and learn the values of America, the Founding Fathers, who they were, what the Constitution meant, what the original intent was, our Christian heritage. He teaches that to kids, teenage and into college. Into the state houses. You actually spend a week there. It's like a boot camp to get you out there, teach you how to do bills and how to do politics from a conservative point of view. So he's a great guy. He's an expert at it. And so I will talk to him a little bit about the Constitution and Ketanji Brown Jackson, who is the candidate for the next seat. But I also am going to let you guys come up with ideas and questions you have. Now, Wyatt will be watching from the sidelines. He'll be using his phone to try to pick up some of the threads. So if you ask a question about the Constitution, yes, some of you we're going to miss. Yes, we're not going to get to everybody. But I want to give you a chance to in real time, interact, ask questions you've never known about the Constitution. I'll ask Rick for you, and you'll actually get your answers on air tonight. So get your questions for the Constitution, anything you've ever wanted to know about it tonight. Get it ready now so that we don't have any lull. We can get right to it. So today, this week, we had something very intriguing happen. This morning, I woke up to the fact that Will Smith had slapped the crap out of Chris Rock, a fellow stand-up. I met Chris back in the 90s when I was doing a television show called Caroline's, and I met him and David Spade came together to watch the show. And so that was the first time I'd met him. And that's before he got to be really big as a stand-up. People knew of him, but he hadn't really hit his stride yet. He's about my size. I'm 5'6", so he's a short guy. Not big, not a stocky guy, so easily slapped. Easily slapped. Why? Would you consider yourself easily slappable?
I mean, I don't know what kind of people you're hanging around with, but typically being slapped isn't a common occurrence.
It is around you?
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not.
That's why it's hard for me to gauge my slappability.
So if somebody slapped you, you'd consider that to be odd and off-putting?
I would consider, off-putting would definitely be a word I'd use to describe it.
Okay, well, let's hope that never happens to you because Lord knows if you're already searching for, he works at Lowe's, if you're already searching for screwdrivers and you're already confused and confounded, last thing you need is a slap to the face.
Okay, so speaking of working at Lowe's, can we talk about for a brief second how I've somehow, for no explicable reason, have somehow become literally recognized on the street levels of famous by working at Lowe's.
It's true. Yesterday, him and I went to Costco, and a guy stopped him out in the parking lot, said, hey, like he's going to be famous. White's a drummer. I thought maybe he knew him from his drumming days or whatever. You helped me at Lowe's.
And the funny part is, that ain't the first time it's happened either.
People stop him in the streets and say, thank you for helping me at Lowe's. That's how
I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense.
You're just such a kind helper, Wyatt. You have got good quality.
Is that truly so rare that it makes you basically a celebrity when you can show it?
The fact that somebody actually treats people with some kind of courtesy and civility in the retail establishment, very rare. Very rare. Speaking of rare, the reason I brought up the fact that Chris got slapped by Will is because, as I told you earlier, I've never been slapped as a comic, stage has never been rushed. I can't even recall ever thinking for a moment I might get in trouble. But I first have to tell you that I didn't know anything about this incident until this morning because it was on the Oscars, and I haven't watched the Oscars in years because who cares about the stinking Oscars? Seriously, they have lost all ability to entertain the common American, the people they depend on to keep spending our money to go see their movies. They mock, ridicule our values every day. They've long ago lost the people that used to watch them. So I literally didn't know what happened because I didn't care. But I watched it take place, and I found it to be interesting. Some people speculated it was a gag they desperately needed to build the ratings, so they figured maybe people would talk about Will Smith walking up and slapping Chris Rock. Well, sure enough, that's all they've been talking about today. That's all they've been talking about. So who knows if they tried to create it or manufacture it? We don't know. He's not going to press charges, I guess. So, and then later, Will won the Oscar for Best Actor, and that's when he talked about how he really is about love. So it really was beautiful to me to watch the truth really reveal itself as to the sort of narcissism these people live in. I really say this. I've been in, I think, 20 movies in my life. Some I've played just little cameos as a crazy, funny character. That was fun. I've had some co-starring roles in 2 or 3 movies where I had large role in it. And I love film, and I love acting, and I love filmmaking, and I love the whole experience. And the people that are out there that are at the highest levels of actors are brilliant. They're geniuses, Meryl Streeps and whatever. Absolutely brilliant actors. Absolutely talented beyond measure. No one's questioning that. But I really have to rack my brain. I really do, to think, and I'm not being in any way snarky. I mean this. I don't know if there is a profession that gets paid that much money for doing something so unimportant as acting. If they never made another movie again for eternity, starting today, you're not going to believe this. The world would keep spinning. We'd still eat. We'd still go out, listen to some live music. Maybe we'd stay home, play Uno. Wyatt, would you? Would you stay home and play Uno if suddenly you couldn't see a movie?
Are you implying that there would literally be nothing else to do but play Uno?
Well, I'm saying...
If so, I'll pass.
I'm telling you that you would have something to do at home, that you don't need a movie. I mean, what is the last movie you saw?
Why would your immediate thing to suggest we do is a game that's basically designed to infuriate you?
It does.
It's not Monopoly levels of infuriating,
yes,
but it's definitely up there.
You know why Uno really doesn't infuriate me as much as it could?
Because you've completely lost all hope of winning and just sort of go through the motions?
No.
Oh. Then why?
Because I don't speak Spanish. So here's the other thing that
this is the stuff you guys come here to see every week.
Listen,
this is the
Uno is one in English. Uno is one in Spanish. It means one. Okay, I don't speak Spanish, so it doesn't impact me quite as deeply because I don't speak the language. So I have to translate it, and by that time, it's not nearly as hurtful to me internally.
What? Okay, so whenever somebody is counting in Spanish, do you genuinely get like upset whenever you hear uno? Like it's
not anymore.
Cero, uno. Oh no.
Well, that's my point. I'm just saying that if you don't speak the language, it doesn't have quite the impact. Speaking of speaking the language, last week I talked to you guys about a concept that's known in the comedy world as parallel development. Why? Do you know what parallel development is?
No, but I can wager a guess.
Okay, go ahead and wager your guess. What would you believe parallel development is?
When two comics completely not meant to come up with material that is derivative of each other. So basically, I write funny chicken joke, somebody else does, and it's similar.
Wyatt.
Yep.
There are no funny chicken jokes.
Then you've never heard a good one.
See what I'm saying, folks? Mm-hmm. This is what I'm talking about with my son. He always finds the obscure reference point to find his and base his comedy on, and it just falls short. He does chicken jokes. And the oldest one, why did the chicken cross the road?
Taxes.
Taxes?
Yeah.
Okay. So he was fleeing the tax collector?
Well, no, you see, the beauty about a joke like that is that it's such a non sequitur that your mind has to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So basically that's a joke that takes all of the hard work off the comedian. The audience has to figure out what it means.
So the audience has to make their mind go blank.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what modern humor is all about. It's just... It exists. It's not really meant to.
So the audience has to do all the work.
Yeah, it's not meant to make you critically think about anything or deconstruct some concept. It's just random stuff happening. Figure it out for yourself.
Okay, well, I think you're right. I think we've seen a little surreal, odd ways that the new comedy is happening for the younger kids, the younger generation. But last week, and this might be why you remembered what it means, because I actually defined it. It is exactly what my son said. If you come up with a joke and you're thinking funny all the time, then you're going to see funny in everything. The analogy I always use, your average person shakes somebody's hand, hey, good to meet you, and then they leave. That's just, they did a little traditional courtesy, and then they moved on and have a conversation left. It's typical. Comedian stops and goes, hey, why do we do this? Why do we hold hands and do that? Now, I stopped and thinking, 2 albums, I've had, I think 2 albums, or at least one, I did a joke about shaking hands. So this is what comedians do. They see funny everywhere they go. We can't live our lives without seeing funny. And it feels almost like a curse, Wyatt. It's like a curse. I can't just walk through life like you can, willy-nilly, finding your wrenches and your screws and your nuts and your bolts and your washers. Oh, I said washer. Do you wash your washers? I would think not. Not you. Not at Lowe's. They don't pay enough to wash washers. Am I right?
I mean, most of them would rust if you did that, unless you're going for a stainless steel option or galvanized, but that depends on your application and your price range.
Or you could sell them rust repellent. Once again, son, I'm teaching you the principles of upselling. And once again, I, as your father, had to teach you things you couldn't have gotten anywhere else. Why? Because you, my friend, come from my loins, not the other way around. Never forget it.
I don't think I will ever forget that statement you just said. In my darkest nightmares.
Oh, and you'll have
I will never forget that.
Well, the reason I bring it up again is about a year ago when I was in my studio and we didn't have insulation yet. Certainly hadn't been drywalled. Didn't have carpet. Didn't have anything. Didn't have HVAC. So I was freezing my hind end off, Wyatt. And I was talking about America that wants to take back freedom, First Amendment speech, free speech, religious liberty speech, Second Amendment, crucial to defending ourselves, things that matter to me as a originalist when it comes to the Constitution. And in the midst of that, I said, I don't want you to be woke, because that has become simply a terminology to reference Marxist ideology like critical race theory and so forth. So I said, I want you to be awakened, like you're my awakened warriors. And I think it was Nick Kress or Stan Stinson commented. He said, hey, that's a great nickname. That should be what we call ourselves, Awakened Warriors. And I thought, okay, I just made it up. Well, the reason I bring this up, Wyatt, is because somebody had told me that I needed merchandise. And they said J.P. Sears, who's that long-haired, red-headed guy that does kind of conservative sketches, if you go to his website, his merchandise, he calls it Awakened Warriors. Now, I said this over a year ago. I made it up on the fly. So, did he steal my gig? Did he watch it and say, what else is going on? Who else is out there conservative? Hey, I love that. I'm taking Awakened Warriors. I didn't copyright or whatever. Or has he been using it for 5 years? I didn't know about it. I came up with it on my own. But see how you can get accused of stealing stuff. And it was completely without merit, because I don't know him. He doesn't know me. I'm guessing he didn't steal the idea from me and the term. And I certainly didn't steal from him. But I'm showing you in real time how you can accidentally use a parallel development of an idea. In this case, though, it was a cooler term. I liked Awakened Warriors, but apparently it's gone. So I'll come up with something else. That's the one thing I have, Wyatt. The one thing I have, creativity. If somebody steals it, I'll just come up with something else. And I didn't say he stole it. I'm just saying, if somebody steals an idea, I'll just figure out another one. Wyatt. You know why? Because I'm not a victim, son. Wyatt, I'm not a victim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe you should say that to your audience instead of the guy who they don't see.
Okay, I'm not a victim. Now listen to me, folks. I wanted to talk to you today about something before we get to Rick Green that I think is important. A meme came out a few days ago, and it's always a composite of my material, okay? And in this meme, it got a lot of traction. Why? Can you put the meme up?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Is it there?
Yep, it's there.
Perfect. Now, if you guys see the meme, what you're looking at is a little clip of a live show I did, and this was just some of the text that came from it. So, it says, how do I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God is a guy? Because he invented women, and they were naked. Only a guy would have come up with that one. That's all it was. This meme, you can take it off now, son. This meme got thousands of interactions and reactions, thousands. Very interesting meme, right? But here's what I one thing that I did want to say. Somebody said something, and I just want to make a point to it. You know, if you've watched my podcast at any length, one thing that I continue to say is it's comedy, Christianity, and conservatism colliding in a cacophony of clarity. So I make fun of these folks. I make fun of things that are out there that are the antithesis of what I think is true and right and good and real and virtuous and strong. But I have to make fun of my own too sometimes. And in this particular case, a guy said something that just kind of hit me the wrong way. So I wanted to read it to you. This was in regards to this meme. And it's very simple and quick, but it says this. His name is Joseph Wolf. Now, I give him his name because he came on my meme in the thread, and he put his name there. He decided to call me out with his name attached, so I'm going to use it. So Joseph said this, based on this simple meme. I'm sorry, Brad, but Jesus wouldn't find this funny. I'm sorry, Brad, but Jesus wouldn't find this funny. I think the first thing we can begin to analyze is what kind of huevos must you possess to have the audacity to tell the rest of us what kind of jokes Jesus would laugh at. I think, why don't we leave Jesus? Everybody's always trying to speak for Jesus, talk for Jesus. He wouldn't find this funny. Jesus wouldn't have said that. Jesus wouldn't do that. Jesus would have worn masks. Jesus would have got a vaccine. Jesus would have gone to the moon. Jesus would have said the moon is made of cream cheese. Jesus would have said we never actually landed on the moon. Jesus said the moon is flat. Jesus said the earth is flat. Jesus would have been here, but he walked off the earth. Will you quit deciding what Jesus would and wouldn't do? Let's start there. Jesus wouldn't find this funny. Then guess what he said? You ready? I know you're trying to make a joke, but this isn't it. Oh, really? That's your opinion, and you have right to it. I want you to. That's what freedom is. But you're proclaiming this isn't a joke, as opposed to saying, in my opinion, I don't find this funny. That's a perfectly rational, free exercise of your First Amendment right. But when you proclaim your point of view, subjectivity, as the end-all, be-all, that is called self-righteousness, legalism, arrogance, and it's not even philosophically true. It's a subjective opinion. Then he said this. He wanted to go into some depth as to why this joke doesn't work for Jesus or him. God made Eve for Adam. Yeah, that's pretty much why I spoke about Adam and Eve. And Adam alone, because he was lonely. The reason Eve was made for Adam was because he was lonely. He was lonely. He was sad. He was looking for friends, and they kept walking off the earth. Then he said Adam himself was also naked. Joseph, I don't know how to tell you this, but Jesus wouldn't have appreciated you bringing up the fact that Adam was naked. We as believers should not be making jokes or implications like this, especially about our Heavenly Father. So apparently, Joseph believed somehow that the joke, the meme, was me somehow referencing that God Almighty, the Father, was attracted to Eve. That's what he got out of that. Nobody else did, by the way. There's thousands of people laughing. That was funny. It was great. But get over yourself, and people always come to my aid because I don't. This is why I don't go on and answer these things. I don't have time for this stuff, from this ludicrousy. And that was my little phone. And so I think it's important that to indicate to you folks that I told you for a long time, one of the things that's bugged me the most about Christians and now leftists is they're taught to judge content instead of context. Now, just in case you think that this joke, this meme was really about, me thinking that God somehow was attracted to the very person he made, why don't we just go ahead and find the clip of me actually doing the bit where these pictures were taken, and you can see what it actually looked like, and then you can judge for yourself. Why? Can you hit that for my people so they can see what it really looked like in real time when I was speaking in front of a people, and they recorded it, and everybody laughed, and then I made 50 to 60. Go ahead!
How else do we find God? What else would he be? Well, here's where we really get to find him. If you really want to know God, he's in the most amazing parts that you find him. Where he's most significantly found is in the mystical places. Because if God is who you would think he is, bigger than anything we can think of, then you'd have to communicate with him differently than when you would a human, because he's not like us. You'd have to speak to him in a language different than the ones we would use together. We'd call it prayer. You'd have to hear and feel and smell and taste and touch him in a different way than we do with empirical evidence. We'd call it faith. It'd be a different way of seeing. And in that experience of seeking him out, we'd find out things that we may not even want to hear, but if he's the rule maker, we've got to listen. I've done some studies, my friends. I found out some things about God. Whether you like it or not, God is a guy. Look, all the ladies are laughing. The dudes are like, dear, may I laugh as well at that? All the young marrieds get that little elbow thing. All the guys married over 30 years, they got a callus. They don't even feel that anymore. is a guy. How do we know that? Evidence, that's right. God isn't just faith alone. Empirical evidence can help us find the very God that gave us the ability to think about him. Number one, we know he's a guy because he always calls himself Father. And up until year 2012, that was normally considered a dude. I know. Who thought that was going to get complicated? How else do we know God's a guy? Because everything he invented, he said, was good. Look what I made! And this is before duct tape, 16, I'll tell you right now. Matter of fact, if God used duct tape, he would have used a real duck. Because he's God. How else do we know God's a guy? Because he worked hard for 6 days and then took a nap. On Sunday, so he could watch the game. Look, I've made people. Here's the rule book. Oh, fumble. And lastly, how do I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that God Almighty is not only real, but he's a guy? Because he invented women. And they were naked. Only a guy would have come up with that one. Look, got a couple Southern Baptists snuck in. I don't believe he said naked. I thought this was a Christian comedy show and he said naked. I'm trying to have pure thoughts and now I have naked people stuck in my head. All I can see is naked people dancing through tulips and clovers. Everywhere I go is naked people stuck in my head. Why would he say naked? And God said it was good. Yes, sir, my brother. There's a man that knows what naked's all about.
So, as you can see, I had a lot more to say about the nakedness. I'm not afraid of nakedness. I don't fear nakedness. I enjoy nakedness in the proper context, as in wife and me, whenever that's possible. Rare. Why it's rare? Does that make you uncomfortable?
What is, huh? I'm making sure the stream doesn't burst into flames. I'm not paying attention.
I understand.
Yeah.
So it's something you would not want to know, being as I'm talking of your mother. But here's the thing. I just think it was important that I wanted to make a point about my own people that have a tendency to come across. Maybe they mean well. Maybe they're trying to, speak their mind about what they think is true and right about God. But it comes across so self-righteous. It's so ridiculous. You have to keep in mind, I'm a comedian. Okay, so it's a different way to communicate than a politician or a pastor or a teacher. It's different, and it's given a special license that the culture desperately needs, because nothing, to me, says more about the importance of comedians than free speech. And we get the very concept of free speech that is constantly being overridden and destroyed from the Constitution and the First Amendment. There's lots of them, but the First Amendment is the most important because it allows the rest of them to continue. So, that being said, I told you guys I was going to have a special session this week, and we're going to let my buddy, America's Constitution coach, come on. We're going to talk about the Constitution while you prepare your questions for Rick Green about the Constitution. So, Wyatt, if you can bring him on, let's say hi to my buddy, Rick. Can we do that? Did you hit the, did you hit the mute? Did you hit the mute?
What's up, brother?
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me, Richard?
I hear you.
What?
Does that mean everything's working? Everything's working?
I
should fake it. I should be like, no.
Yeah, exactly. You should have. You should have. It would have been so typical. I'm so grateful that we figured something out. Well, listen, brother, I was just spending a moment talking about
a joke that I had done that went out as a meme, and some guys got upset about it because it was my joke about God is a guy because he made women and they were naked, and only a guy would have thought of that. And some guy took offense that somehow I was, I guess, acting like God was attracted to. I can't even follow how these people come up with this stuff. But then I showed the clip of me actually doing it so they could see the context. And I always try to teach my people, Christians, but also Americans, we've learned to judge context instead of content. And that is killing us because there's no subtlety anymore. Do you find that to be the case as a public speaker, that things that used to be presumed you understood the foundation of this idea, or where I'm going, you almost have to spoon feed people like they're just not educated? Does that resonate with you, or is it just me?
No, you're spot on, man. I was just having this conversation with my boys around the fire, because even some of the kids their age in the church, they still want to be spoon fed. And my point to them was, look, man, we're at a time of war right now in this country. This is a battle for the heart and soul of our nation and where we're going to go as a nation. I want warriors on my side. And so if that means some people are going to maybe talk a little more coarse than I do, I'm okay with that right now. If they're speaking truth, it's we're at this point where getting offended over these silly things. And I actually said this to somebody one time, Brad, whenever you and I did one of our shows and they got offended over, it wasn't the naked lady thing. It was something else. I laughed so hard one time at Patriot Academy when you did the naked lady bit. And I was watching these shall we say, more conservative folks wanting to laugh so bad, and they didn't know if it was okay. And so they looked back at one of their leaders, and the leader was laughing really hard. And so it was like, oh, okay, it's okay to laugh. It was hilarious. But my point is, somebody had been offended by some, joke that was hilarious, and wanted to not be associated with us anymore. And I said, you know what? The barbarians are not just at the gate. They're inside the door. And I'm showing up at your place with my army of warriors to do battle to help save your family and save this nation. And you're offended at one of the tattoos or the patches on one of my guys' jacket. Fine. We'll take our stuff and go somewhere where people really want to be saved and enjoy freedom. That's kind of how I am at this point. And I say that as somebody who might have been prudish at other times, right? I might have been that guy, not might have. I had my days where I was like, oh, we got to do it exactly right, and everybody's got to dress just right, and we have to. I realize how silly that is now. It's kind of a pharisaical, look good on the outside. And this is not to say there shouldn't be some level of standards and all that kind of. It's to say major in the majors, folks, and stop getting caught up on these little things. I pray for a day when we can be caught up on the little things again. That is not today for sure.
Yeah. Well, as I said, the things that people are getting upset about is just proof about how little they realize what's at stake. If that's where you're going to put your energy.
Yeah, exactly.
We really we're doomed. Now, I do need to say this. Unfortunately, our tech didn't go quite as well as we thought. Once again, you're dragging as far as your video feed. It's okay. We can keep doing this like last time because we can hear each other perfectly. And really, it is a podcast, so it's usually just audio. It just bugs me because I wanted it to be real. We even did a test beforehand with somebody, and everything was perfect. So I thought, okay, that's all I wanted to know. But anyway, it's all right. We're going to continue to do this because I did want people to be able to ask you questions. But
what you're saying is we're going to be Speed Racer and Trixie tonight.
That's exactly
right. Yeah.
And I will be Racer X. So you're just
so nobody's going to be Trixie. We're not. No one is Trixie here. We're all men. No one's going to pretend to be Trixie.
But there will be a monkey in the trunk. But that's another story for people. And by the way, we're showing our age. I'm telling you, half the people here are going, no idea what you're talking about.
Who is this Speed Racer guy they're talking
about? But well, as I said, I was going to give people a chance to talk to them. You're an expert on the Constitution. And so oftentimes people don't get a chance to get their questions asked because they do get frustrated. They do get upset as conservatives, as Christians, as heck, Muslims, as atheists. Don't matter if they care about freedom. They need to know how we can depend on those freedoms being protected. And of course, it's supposedly through the rule book in our American legislature, which is the Constitution. But it doesn't mean that I don't care. It's like a contract. You can have all the dots and tittles crossed and whatnot. But if somebody decides to break it, it ain't so easy to just say, oh, wait a minute, we got to start over. You're in trouble. You got to go through lawsuits and you got to go through getting a lawyer and blah, blah, blah. It's just, if people decide to circumvent the law, it's not necessarily that easy to immediately put the brakes on. And that's where we're at. I mean, I'm watching our Constitution be trampled. But you know what, Rick? Every time a conservative does something or says something within a context of a law, let's say the Florida law right now that simply said, how about we not talk to kindergartners through third grade about sex and homosexuality? How about we just teach them how to read and write and do that? That somehow that becomes controversial. And the left thinks that we are breaching the Constitution. So clearly, there has to be or should be a standard by which we understand what each one of the amendments and each one of the rights given to us in the Bill of Rights, what they meant. And this is why I always call myself an originalist. I don't know what else to think other than we got to go back to the original intent. David Barton wrote a great book about that, the original intent, probably the first time I had ever heard the term.
Hey, by the way, if you see my video off, I thought maybe that was, I'm just trying to get too many, my bandwidth may not be good enough. So I was going to go straight audio and see if it timed out better for us. Let me know if you want me to turn the video back on.
No, that might be better. It won't be as annoying to folks. I hate to not see, but we'll figure it out. We actually have a pretty fast speed up here, so maybe that is the problem. It's from your end. But anyways, so before we get to questions, White, do we have some people asking questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hang on. You don't have to use that because it echoes. Okay, you can just talk to me. So we have some questions that have been asked?
Yeah.
Okay, but before we get to it, you just hang on to those. I just want to make sure I'm giving some time to set the stage, but I do want to ask the questions. And I also need you to tell me who it's from so I can acknowledge them. So here's the thing, Rick. I remember talking to Alan Keyes years ago, who was a black conservative, and I said, I don't remember what we were dealing with. It might have been another Supreme Court justice that was being nominated, but I said, you know what? I don't want another conservative Supreme Court justice. This is me saying this. I don't want another liberal Supreme Court justice. You know what I want? I want a Supreme Court justice that simply interprets the Constitution the way it was intended. There shouldn't be a bias either way. So, how do we find the foundational truth of a concept so we understand true north when it comes to some of these ideas? Or are we so far down the road now that that's never going to be rediscovered?
No, I really think it can be. And what you're describing is, I think you're right. Terminology matters, right? Instead of saying conservative, we should say originalist and someone that actually cares about what is written on the paper and has actually been adopted by the American people. And I thought even with the hearings last week that should have been more of the focus. I appreciated the Republicans pointing out the lunacy of this Supreme Court nominee not being able to define a woman, basically going soft on pedophiles. I mean, all the other crazy stuff about this lady. But the thing that is most troublesome, even above and beyond all that, is that she doesn't care about the Constitution at all. So she's willing to take those crazy ideas and push them into American law using the Supreme Court, which is not supposed to make law. In other words, she doesn't care about the Constitution. She bows at the feet of stare decisis, which is what we use for describing judges always looking to previous judges' opinions rather than to the Constitution. So they look at whatever the last Supreme Court decision was, and the one before that, and the one before that, which is all just, 5 judges or 6 judges or 7 judges and their opinion, rather than what has actually been voted on by the American people, what has been adopted by the state legislatures across the country. And she is very much about letting whoever's on the bench make law and make the decisions for the country. And that is not what the founders wanted. That's not what, I don't think anybody watching, if they think about it, they don't want that either. Even if you had all Clarence Thomases, right? I mean, he's the one guy on the court that I respect the most because he is an originalist. But if all 9 Supreme Court justices were like Clarence Thomas, I would still not want 9 unelected, unaccountable lawyers in Washington, D.C. making the policy decisions for our country. They are supposed to apply the Constitution, and that's it. They were not designed to make policy decisions. And so to your question, yes, we can get back there, but it's going to be a long battle to get there because most of the lawyers have been trained in law schools that worship at the feet of stare decisis and at the black-robed aristocrats that we call judges. And so they've been trained to believe like that, and they're the next generation of judges, of course. Ironically, as you ask that question, really, there's a great verse, and I say I'm not going to be able to point to the chapter and verse off the top of my head. I've forgotten, but it says, that when you fix the lawyers and the judges, that's when I'll renew your land. That you have to start with the lawyers and the judges. So you've put your finger on the real problem in America, and it is that we let the court get out of control. And we can fix it, but it's going to take a convention of states. It's going to take some constitutional amendments to override years and years of bad Supreme Court decisions.
Justice Alito was an originalist. I mean, that guy was so pure when it came to reminding himself what his role was and what was important for the American people to know what they can count on. And sometimes you do hear a decision you don't like, but you know what? If it was constitutionally sound and did coalesce with what the original intent, then we as good citizens need to say, okay, I get it. I didn't get what I wanted. I've gone too far. And it takes a self-discipline. It's what the founders always spoke about a self-disciplined nation.
Self-governing ourselves, being able to govern ourselves, being able to be self-disciplined, like you're saying. Without that, you can't have freedom. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, so one of the things that bothered me was with this Ketanji Brown Jackson, what has nothing to do with, I don't know enough about, the ins and outs of every court case she did or whatever. I mean, I heard things that certainly are troublesome. But of course, the thing that bothered me, and I would hope anybody, is that she was put into place based on the way she looks. I want a woman. I want a black woman. That's it. As though that's the right that the court was supposed to be made up. Next time we need an Eskimo. We haven't had an Eskimo yet. It's about time. I mean, seriously, that's what they're doing.
We don't have a hillbilly. We need a hillbilly. Yeah. So I need to be on the Supreme Court. We need a hillbilly like me on the Supreme Court to meet that quote. It's racist, man. It's sexist. It's racist and sexist. And the president of the United States is doing it and saying to everybody, you got to have the right genitalia and you got to have the right color skin or I will not even consider you. MLK, you and I have been there. We love the whole dream of being able to judge each other based on the content of character, not the color of skin. Both of us love that. And the fact that we're now going to spit on that and go backwards 50 years to start judging people based on color of skin, shame on Joe Biden for leading the way in that.
Well, and honestly, Rick, I don't think Joe Biden has made a decision since he's been in office. I don't think he knows what's going on. I really don't. I think this is this was a coup. Somehow, whoever controls the world, and it ain't America, and it's not China, they're all involved, and they have their power and structure. But there's something more nefarious out there than I ever realized, and as a naive human thinking that we all kind of have freedoms or whatever. Yeah, until somebody decides your bank account's no good and that's it, and we're taking your money, until they decide you got to take this special elixir, you can't buy food. Till that happens, you realize maybe I'm not, maybe even the Constitution isn't as powerful as I thought, because if nobody obeys it. Now that can have its upside. It can have its upside where I don't mean breaching the Constitution, but breaching a law that was put into place that people say, unconstitutional. I'm not wearing that. I'm not doing that. I'm going to go in here. And the
to quote MLK again, right? An unjust law is no law at all. You and I learned that when we were in Birmingham, remember?
And the justices can say anything, but they can't enforce it. They can't make people abide by it. They really don't have power if the people decide this is not constitutional. And of course, we can't have rogue citizens deciding we don't like you. So it's always a fine balance. And that's why I just was saying, is there a way to find the truth of the rule book, which was, what did the Constitution mean? And when it started going off, how do we do that?
It's so black and white. It's so easy to do if people are willing to take the time to study. It's the reason, number one, the Constitution itself is not difficult to read, and then you can divine some intent by just reading the Constitution itself. But then they gave us all of these records to say, as we were debating this, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said this, and they explained this is what's behind, for instance, the whole copyright, trademark, patent part of Article 1, Section 8, talking about protecting inventors. And so if you produce a comedy special and you put that on a DVD and you put copyright on it, that is yours and it's to be owned by you. Well, Noah Webster was the guy that suggested that to Ben Franklin and the other guys. And so he explains why, because that'll make more people willing to be creative, because now your invention is protected. Now, they talked about the fact that we're not going to fund your invention or fund your creation, which is why I'm against all the money that goes to these universities for research and all that. That's when you end up with people scratching the backs of the people that support them, and the money flows into these things that are not even good research. So that's a distortion of it. But I mean, you whether you want to talk about the Second Amendment, the right to keep to bear arms, the freedom of religion, all of these issues, there's debate behind that, and we can look at the debates at the convention, which what I mean by that is the Federal Convention in 1787, where they created the Constitution. We can look at it in each state that had ratification debates over the Constitution. We can look at the Federalist Papers, where the guys that gave us the Constitution, 3 of those guys wrote a bunch of letters to New Yorkers to be printed in the paper to basically convince them how the Constitution is going to work, why it's a good thing. The Anti-Federalists, who didn't want the Constitution to be ratified, why they said the things that they said. So 100%. Brad, if we're willing to do a little homework and study those things, absolutely you can figure out the original intent of each of those clauses. In all of our Constitution classes, we do that with a few issues. We don't think most people will stay awake for a long, drawn-out every issue, but we do take the hot issues and say, okay, what's the big issues right now in our country today? And how can we figure out the original intent on that? And then what can we do about it as citizens? Because too often, Brad, we tend to say, the Constitution, I don't understand it. Congress, it's a long ways away from me. Federal government's too big. I can't do anything about any of these things. And we give up. And so what we try to teach in our classes is we say, look, it is a big system and it's going to take years to turn this around, but you can make a difference at the local level. You can be a part of the solution. But first, we have to become students of freedom, and then we have to try to teach as many people in our circle of influence as we possibly can. That's what ultimately, long-term, will turn this thing around.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I said when I started this podcast is that I'm not trying to be another guy saying, aren't conservatives great and leftists are crazy? And can you imagine if, a conservative said that? And it's like, I don't need that. We've got plenty of guys that are great at that. I said, I want to laugh. I want to talk about real important things, but most importantly, I wanted to see if there's a way to fix things. Can we change things? Can we do something, which is what you and I have done ever since we've had the Comedy Constitution tour, marching orders, leave with something you can do. And we have seen it from the grassroots. I think we talked about this before at the school board meetings. Where
we see all these people getting elected to these things. Yeah.
So there is a way to actually take back your governance as a citizen and really make changes. So I'm excited about that. We are coming out. I should let people know before we get into some questions that you and I are on a big, like a 2.5 week tour, like every night in Texas, starting in April the 11th, I believe. I'll go through like the 27th. So is there a place? I don't think it's up on my site yet, but where can people go in Texas to see where we're going to be touring here in a couple weeks?
In fact, I'm going to grab that link and drop it into your Facebook Live. I think that might be the quickest, easiest way. If they just go to Patriot Academy, they can find it. There'll be some banners and stuff there, but I'm going to send them to the exact page, because the cool thing, like you said, Brad, we're doing, all over the state. So people from, even if you're in New Mexico, you can come over to the ones that we're doing in West Texas. If you're in Louisiana, you can come over to the one we're doing in Houston or in East Texas, Oklahoma, come on down. People come in from all over the country and be a part of this. You will enjoy it, I promise you, and have a great time. But certainly to all the people in Texas, We're going all over the state. I think it's 16 dates. I can't remember the total of what we're doing, but it's going to be phenomenal. We're going to have a great time. Let's see. Yeah, I'm grabbing the link right here, and I will copy and paste April 11th all the way through April 27th. And shoot, we may even end up adding a few dates before this thing is over. Unless they kick you out of Texas, you might get in enough trouble that they just remove you. We'll see how that works out.
Rick, Texas would never kick me out. I am too crucial. Too crucial. I'm on their side. Well, listen, I want to give people, this is the first time I've ever done this on my podcast. It's grown little by little. It's becoming like a big boy podcast. I'm going to let people ask you questions, let them participate. I've watched guests that I found interesting watching the show, and I always said, man, I wish I could ask these guys some questions. So I thought I'm going to give these people a chance. So Wyatt, do you have any queued up? Give me the first question and tell me who it is and question.
All right, so first one that I found is by Dwayne. It's a weird spelling. It's D-U-A-N-E.
D-U-A-N-E. Dwayne. D-U-A-N-E. Dwayne.
Yeah, Dwayne Bratfold.
Bratfold? Okay, he's been with us. He's one of our regulars. Okay, Dwayne Bratfold has a question. Where's he from? Does it say?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
He asks, can Rick explain where in the Constitution we the people can get rid of these politicians that are killing our society? It seems to go voices account anymore.
Okay, he's asking where, this is a little ineffective for me to try to say. He said, where in the Constitution can we do what?
Get rid of the politicians that are killing our society.
Oh, get rid of the politicians that are killing our society. Okay, well, I mean, take that one.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, just look at Article 1 and how our election process works. There's a lot of frustration with our current election system in some of these states where people feel like, hey, they're not counting the real votes, and there's too many opportunities for fraud, and you're mailing out ballots to everybody. It's so easy to cheat at this point. And so some of my friends, they say, I'm not even going to participate because I don't think it's free and fair elections anymore. My response to that is always, look, even if you think they're going to steal it or you think they're going to try to steal it, do not stay home. You got to stay up. You got to show up in force. And Virginia is the perfect example. That was a blue state running the easy to cheat system, mail in ballots for everybody, no voter ID, all of that. And we were still able to defeat them and hopefully now change those election laws to make it harder to cheat. So it's going to be tough, but we got to show up. We have to vote. That's the first way to get rid of those politicians. Now, I do think that even when the votes are cast legally and counted legally, the system is stacked for the incumbents. So if you're already in office, you have name ID, you have the system to get you on news all the time and to do mailers out of your capital account. I mean, there's so many advantages to the incumbent, and that's why they get elected 94% of the time. No matter who runs against them and no matter how bad they are, it is hard to beat an incumbent. So I am personally in favor of an amendment that would limit the terms of members of Congress and of judges, that they would have a certain amount of time. For judges, I think it should be 10 years. For members of Congress, I think 12 years is long enough. And then they got to go home, and somebody else represents that area. You telling me out of 1 million people in a district, there's not another person that can rightfully represent that district? That's crazy. So when these people are there for 40 years, 45 years, some of them 50 years in office, they accumulate so much power that it becomes very difficult to get rid of them. That's one of the major problems I think we're facing both at the federal level and at the state level. So I'm a big fan of term limits. The only way that's going to happen is this right here, Convention of States. We've got to have a constitutional amendment process that George Mason, he was Colonel George Mason at the Constitutional Convention, put this into the Constitution at the last minute, and it was unanimous. Everybody agreed. They said, oh, wow, you've discovered a real flaw here. If only the federal government can override the federal government, we got a problem. We need a way for the states to override the federal government. Term limits is the only way to do that. So for your person's question, always show up, work hard to defeat incumbents or get rid of people that are bad in office. But I think we have to change the system itself to limit how long someone can serve. And that includes good people, Brad. So like if you were in Congress or I was in Congress, we would be limited as well. And that's why some of our conservative friends are not for term limits, but I am. I think it spreads the power out. And the more you can do that, the better off everybody's going to be.
Yeah, and maybe it forces them to do less nefarious things because they know they're going to be back out in public pretty soon. They're going to have to suffer the same consequences everybody else did. And, maybe they want to get a job or do whatever they want to do when they've got out of service. So they want to maybe have a stellar record, at least try. Why? Here's what I want you to do. Grab one of those screens, grab on your phone a question and then just text it to me and then I can read it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You just find it in your phone, screenshot it, send it to me and I'll get it. So when it comes to this convention of states, let's see, last time we talked, you said there were 17 that have signed up?
Yes, and 2 more have passed since, so we're at 19 now. And I say that South Carolina has one more final step they've got to finish, but they're there. They've passed it through the House and Senate. They had a small language difference, so they've got to consolidate that. But yeah, so the momentum's there. We're well over halfway there. It takes 34 states to call for a convention. And then once you get to the convention, it takes a majority. So 26 states would have to adopt a recommended amendment. It doesn't mean it would go into the Constitution immediately. It's kind of a fail-safe that I think is a good fail-safe. Whatever they do at the convention is just a suggestion. And then it goes back to all 50 states, and each state will have to approve that amendment. And if 38 states approve it, then it goes into the Constitution. So it's a big hurdle. It's going to take a lot to get this done, but it can be done. And I think, honestly, Brad, I think enough Americans are frustrated at this point that we can get there. We've got 5 million people that have signed the petition calling for this, and we've got volunteers in every state rep district in the country. So in every state, and then in every legislative district for that state, we have people that are involved in this and working on it and trying to make it happen. So it takes time, but I think we'll get there.
So you're saying that and this is important for people, because people that don't know about the Convention of States, it sounds spooky to them. Like, oh my gosh, they're just going to go and run roughshod on the Constitution, start putting crazy crap in, and now we're really in trouble because something like this is so important that you get it as right as you can, because it's supposed to be set in stone. I mean, it's supposed to be. This is it. If you keep messing with stuff, it loses its sacredness, if you want to use that term, because it's too simple. So the states are then offered these potential amendments that are discussed. The ramifications of what that is, it's all written out so they know exactly what it's supposedly accomplishing. And then the citizens of each state then have a referendum where they literally go and vote to agree.
They have a choice. Yeah, each state has a choice. They can either have a convention where they send delegates to that convention to debate, like some states did with the original Constitution, or their state legislature can approve it and vote on it. And that's the reason why, in fact, let me just back up for a second, because you raise a really, really good point, and that is, wait a minute, this is our Constitution. It's supposed to be set in stone. We don't want to change this willy-nilly. In fact, the Declaration of Independence says we don't want to change things for, quote, light and transient causes. You only change things whenever it's gotten so bad that you have to change things to save liberty. And that's where we are at this point. The Constitution is what should be the supreme law of the land. Those basic ideas of free speech and freedom of religion, and due process and Second Amendment self-defense, all of those things, that should be the law of the land. The problem is that the written Constitution is not the law of the land right now. It's this massive thing I call the Courtstitution, which is all of these Supreme Court decisions about the Constitution. That has become the law of the land. And nobody really knows. It's this massive conglomeration of all these Supreme Court decisions over 100 years. It's confusing. We don't know for sure when does freedom of religion work and when does it not work. Just this last week, the Supreme Court was asked to protect these Navy SEALs who had religious exemptions. The military is going to kick them out or go make them do a desk job or whatever if they don't get the jab. And so they have a religious objection to the jab because of abortifacients and all these other reasons why it violates their particular religion. And the Supreme Court said, nope, you're on your own. We're not going to protect your freedom of religion. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're not upholding the Constitution itself. So the Supreme Court is a real problem. That's why we have to amend the Constitution to overrule the Supreme Court, to overrule the federal government. So it's not that we're changing the Constitution. We're actually upholding the Constitution, and we're using the amendment process to restore the Constitution by overruling what the federal government has done. Now, I will say, let's not forget, we have amended the Constitution 27 times. There's 27 amendments to the Constitution. So it's not that it's so sacred it should never be modified. I'm okay with clarifying things, even at times potentially changing something in the Constitution. Like we changed term limits for president. The Constitution, as designed by the Founding Fathers, said a president could stay president as long as they could get reelected. George Washington set the example in saying, I'm only going to run twice. And then every president after that followed his example until FDR, and he got elected 4 times. And the American people said, that's too long. Let's change the Constitution so that a president can only be elected for 8 years. So we put that amendment, that's the 22nd Amendment, into the Constitution. So I think we need a change to what was set in concrete by the Founding Fathers to do the same thing for Congress and the courts. So that is a change to what was set in stone, but it's a structural change that fits better with the way things are working today. It's not a principle change, right? Like we're not changing freedom of speech. We're not changing freedom of religion. We're changing structural things. And that's the only things I think will actually pass at a convention of states and in the states when they ratify and approve those amendments. It's going to be structural things like how long can somebody serve in Congress? How can states overturn federal Supreme Court decisions? Things like that. Anyway, I'm getting too far in the weeds.
No, it's not in the weeds at all. It's important and it's great. And I hope people are understanding, how much we do take it serious about the Constitution. And we're not trying to make it, lean one way or the other or be more conservative. We're trying to find what was the original intent. Let those guys who created this whole country, let's go back to their wisdom and whatever. Of course, we're going to adapt to things as a culture that changes and life changes and people change and things. I get that. But if we don't have a foundational rule, then there is no way to ever reel in something that is beginning to fall apart. There's no way to do it because we don't have any architectural plans that lets us really remember what we were supposed to be in the first place. So we got another one.
I wish without a rule book, man. It's like trying to have a game and no rules, no foul lines, no number of strikes, no base path, right? Everybody just does whatever they want. And you remember when we did our defending the Constitution without shooting someone at Independence Hall. And when we did Electoral College, I came back later and used a baseball analogy to explain Electoral College. Well, I've been thinking about what you and I did there, and I thought we need a baseball analogy for amending the Constitution. And here's what it is. You quite literally have 2 teams on the field, and the umpires, the judges, are supposed to settle disputes, right? They're supposed to call the balls and strikes. And if somebody says a rule was broken, they're supposed to break out the rule book and say, that's right, we had to follow the rule book. But what has happened is we have teams that have gone out on the field and you got a guy running from first base to second base. And normally if you get the ball and you go tag them, they're out. But we got a first base coach that's leaning over to the guy on first base and he's saying, hey man, I know normally I wouldn't tell you to walk over to second base because they could get you out, but COVID, there's no rules. Hey, just go ahead and walk over to second base. And he's walking over to second base and the pitcher's walking over and tagging him out halfway and saying, you're out. And he's going, no, I'm not. He goes over to second base and says, hey, COVID. And then they call the umpire over and go, isn't he out? Look at the rule book. And the umpire says, we don't care about the rule book. I feel like he should be able to do that because of COVID, so it's perfectly fine. The judges are not doing their job upholding the Constitution. So what do? The owners of the team have to come together and say, you know what? We're going to clarify the rule book so the umpires can't get outside of the rule book anymore. And that's what a convention of states is. It's the owners of the team. Who's that? We, the people. It's us coming together through our state legislators and saying, we're going to clarify the rule book so that we can play this game called freedom and play this game called a constitutional republic and stop allowing people to make up their own rules. That's really what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, no, and if we don't, then somebody else will make the rules and you'll be out and there's no way back. This is one I've assumed I get from my people. I'm sure you hear it every time. Matter of fact, it was in defending the Constitution without shooting someone. How much should the government regulate what weapons citizens can own? And I'm sure that's the guy who's saying, hey, how come we can't have a machine gun or a mortar or a cannon or a tank? They always say that.
I want all of the above. I want all of the above, and I think I should be able to have all of the above. And the best way I know to answer that from an originalist perspective, like what would the founding father for, is that back in their day, the closest thing to those things that we would consider to be only for the military would be a cannon. and they had absolutely no prohibition against individuals owning cannons. We do find a few city ordinances where they said, hey, please don't fire the cannon at night in town. You know, it's kind of loud, it's waking people up. We don't want that. And you had some places where the local entities could say, to go into this particular place, we can limit firearms. But that's about it. Other than that, your ownership in your own home should be unlimited. I think this California law that they just passed, I'm sorry, not California, Washington law that they just passed, limiting the capacity of your magazine, that's insanity, folks. That's like saying, back in the Revolutionary War period, that would be like saying, we're going to limit how many musket balls you can have in your pouch on your belt, and we're going to limit how much black powder you can carry. Show me one place in the United States of America where that ever happened. Absolutely not. Why? Because it puts the individual at a disadvantage to the person that's not willing to follow the law. Because who's going to follow that law and limit their magazine capacity? And now they only got 9 or 10 rounds when the bad guy's sitting over there with a 33 round magazine sticking out of his Glock. And now you're limited to 8 or 9 rounds. That's silliness. That's absolutely against the principle of self-defense. So the answer really comes back to the principles, as always. The principle is called self-defense, and there is nothing about self-defense that should limit your ability to be able to go toe-to-toe with the bad guy if they show up to try to harm your family. So whatever exists, you should be able to have. Now, I get it. Nuclear weapons, okay, yeah, I would probably be for not allowing people to have a nuclear weapon. But frankly, a tank, certainly a machine gun. I mean, there is not a single example of I think it's 33,000 permit owners in America that have automatic weapons. There's not a single instance of any of those people that followed the rules, filled out all the paperwork, and got their machine gun and own their automatic firearm where they have used that to commit a crime. Not one. Not one. Yeah. So the people that are willing to obey the law, they should be allowed to have whatever weapon they want. Let me say one more thing, Brad, because it's also not just about the wolf showing up at your door. It's about being able to fight the government. That was the reason for the Second Amendment. It was twofold: self-defense if you're attacked by an individual or a gang or whatever, but also to remind the government that, hey, we can fight back. If you push too far, we can fight back. If you start coming for our kids, you start coming for whatever, we can stand our ground, and we have the weapons to be able to fight back. So the Founding Fathers would have thought, wait a minute, you're going to let the government have certain weapons that you're not allowed to have? How in the world are you going to keep a tyrannical government at bay if you do that? You're basically handing over the ability for the government to walk all over you and then take every weapon that you have. So from their perspective, the principle of keeping government in check would be why they would say you ought to be able to own all of those things.
Well, I think I heard the story of the Japanese general after Pearl Harbor, and they wiped out all of our naval capacity. And people said, well, why didn't you all just invade America? I mean, why didn't you just move on in? And he said, because we knew there'd be 20 million guns, facing the other direction. There apparently, now maybe it's an apocryphal story, I don't know, but there was this idea that if you know that all the citizens can shoot, that's a formidable army, even if it's a guerrilla warfare that you have to contend with. People can just suddenly come from nowhere and shoot you, and you got to deal with that. And one of the things that I find fascinating about the idea of the Second Amendment critics is they are usually, when they say things like, well, who needs a 33 capacity magazine? Nobody needs this. Like, says who? What do you get to decide what I need? Or not your business, really, what I need. Well, it's not for hunting. So what? What difference does it make? The thing that I think people miss when it comes to this, when they start being concerned about the Second Amendment, is because we've had these mass shootings, and they're terrible. Obviously, you're going out to dinner with your friends, and some guy decides, I'm going to go into Luby's and shoot 15 of you, and you ain't going to do a thing about it because nobody expects that. Or you're at the gas station, or you're at the movie theater, or whatever. And so those horrible, horrible situations make us go, wow, if this guy didn't have this gun, right? But here's the thing. What they forget about is that the founders gave, like you said, the ability for us to defend ourselves against a bad guy or a tyrannical government at the same capacity that the bad guy and the government had access to the same weapons. So clearly, they didn't say, for example, back in those days, listen, we're going to let the government have machine guns, but you guys only get your muskets. No, because there weren't any machine guns. Nobody had them. So clearly, if people are growing in the technology, that guarantees you the bad guys got it. So I need it too. I need
That's
to
right.
keep up with the technology that the guy that's going to misuse it is going to have. And the only way I can do that is I have at least equal firepower. If not, if you're really smart, more firepower. So I can
Yeah.
try to dominate you. So there you have it. I mean,
Well,
that's the
And Brad, just to address some of the, I'm watching the comments in the Facebook Live too, and to address that and what you said, some people are asking, well, why would you do this? Why would you be willing to kill someone else to save your family? Why is your family sacred? And I think from a very clear moral clarity position that life is precious, and that when someone else is going to take the life of your family member, you have every right under the laws of nature and nature's God. It's innate within us. God designed us this way to defend life. And that sometimes means taking a life in order to defend life. That for people to create a moral equivalence between that and say that that's wrong, they don't understand the 10 Commandments. They don't understand thou shalt not murder. It's not thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not take innocent life. And this may be very controversial for your audience, Brad, but gun violence saves lives. Gun violence saves lives. When you look at these mass murder events, they are stopped by someone using the violence of a gun, firing that weapon and stopping the bad guy. That gun violence ends up saving other lives. When Stephen Williford, my friend that stopped the mass murder event in Sutherland Springs at that church, the bad guy had already killed 26 people. He was about to kill 27 more in that church. And Stephen Williford, using gun violence on the bad guy, stopped him and saved those other 27 lives. Virtually every mass murder event, that's how it ends up stopping, is someone that has a gun. And it has to be a trained good guy with a gun, not just a good guy with a gun, but a trained good guy with a gun ends up stopping the bad guy with a gun. So I don't even call them mass shootings. I call them mass murder events. Whatever the weapon, they might be driving a truck into a crowd. I mean, people use all kinds of weapons other than guns to create murder and mass murder. In fact, guns are only about 9% of the murders that take place out there. So anyway, all of that to say, it's all about morality, and it's all about the biblical concept of self-defense and being able to defend the innocent against those who are evil, frankly. And there is evil in the world, and this inability to recognize that there's evil in the world and that we have a duty and responsibility to stop that evil from harming the innocent. I don't know what to tell you. If you don't think that we should do that, then grab your flowers and candy canes and go stand out in front of the tanks every time a tyrannical leader decides to take over. I mean, it's absolutely necessary to stop evil.
Well, on that note, and by the way, if there's, we're running out of time, and I know you got to go in a few minutes, and I've gone over, but I want to give you guys a chance to ask Griff some questions. He's an expert. You don't often have a chance to speak to an expert on the Constitution. But I need a few more questions if you want to. But I did want to follow up with this one question, since we're talking about violence and the unfortunate need to defend yourself against those who are going to kill you and not care. One of the things that I really found important about the Second Amendment, outside of the guns, was the fact that they said a militia was going to be necessary for you to defend yourself. And now I think they probably were initially looking at it as the way the army would form if we were being invaded or something was taking place. But I mean, I guess in worst case scenario, if you did get a totalitarian government and, tyrant in charge of things and began to try to sweep into your home and wreak havoc, a militia would be helpful there too. And now that would be very difficult to do nowadays. Because the way we would mobilize would be to contact each other through social media and begin to set up ways to defend ourselves and practice and rehearse and do tactical drills like any military would do. And that would be shut down. It would be very difficult. We're learning about warfare in America, in this soft tyranny that we're dealing with, that for us to even try to create those militias would not be easy to do. You would be branded as a hate group or a white supremacist group or what, who knows? Even if it was all blacks, it'd be a white supremacist group because that's the way they roll nowadays. So,
That's right.
two things that I'm curious about. I believe that the vaccine in the military was a means by which they could eliminate soldiers who would not accept an unconstitutional order. That's what I believe.
Right.
I believe they did that so they could get rid of those who they realized would turn on an unconstitutional order to say, I can't do that, Sarge, and I'm going to actually have to do a citizen's arrest or whatever they would call it on you, because that's I'm not going to go in and start shooting my own fellow Americans. So what I'm wondering, in your thoughts on this, is if they eliminate all those soldiers who would have stood for true patriotism and defense, and end up with a bunch of drones who will do exactly what they're told. We already saw the Obama administration get rid of good generals who are conservative and put in these Marxists. I mean, I don't know how else you can see or explain the idea of putting a Marxist in control of our military, but see it as a takeover of our country. I mean, we're literally it's an insurrection within the military itself based on ideology. I know people are going to say, oh, I'm going too far, or I'm a conspiracy theory. But what would it take? How would, worst case scenario, a civil war or a fight against your government? God forbid. Don't want it. Don't ask for it. Don't want it to happen. But
yeah,
how would it happen if that was what it came down to?
Well, and let me first address the whole concept of militia, just like you started with, and the founder's view on that was, hey, it's basically your church security team, right? It's you and your neighbors. It's the community coming together, being ready to defend the community should the community be attacked. I mean, that was really the idea behind it, and certainly is still a very constitutional practice to take place. I frankly encourage every church to have a security team where they do train, and they are essentially the militia for that church, ready to defend if some crazy guy comes in and attacks that church, and potentially take it to the next level. What if the community is marched upon, not maybe by the U.S. government, but let's say it's marched upon by an out of control mob. We saw a lot of that in the last 2 years. We saw some out of control mobs that destroyed billions and billions of dollars worth of businesses, killed dozens of cops. Killed and hurt hundreds of people all across the nation, burned our cities. And so in the areas where, I give you one example, Jacksboro, Texas, where they were going to wreak havoc in Jacksboro, Texas, a whole bunch of cowboys got together, had their firearms with them, and they surrounded the town square. And when the mob showed up and started to get out of their vans and get ready to create havoc, they saw all those guys and went, I think we'll go to another town. Why? Because the town showed up to defend themselves. That's the real purpose of a militia in the heat of the moment. And part of the reason you want that is because the government cannot be big enough to defend each of us in our homes. You don't want a police state where you are always counting on the police officer to defend you. The police are not there to stop the bad guy from attacking you all the time. They're there most of the time to investigate what happened and go after the bad guy that attacked you, which means you have to be ready. James Wilson signed both the Declaration and the Constitution and served on the U.S. Supreme Court. And he said, every man's house is his castle. You are the commanding officer of your house. If you get robbed in your own home, it is your fault. You cannot expect the police to be everywhere and stop every crime. So it's back to what you started tonight with, self-governance. It's about us being responsible and self-disciplined to be able to take care of our own, take care of our family, and defend them. And then as a militia, quote unquote, or really just banding together as neighbors or our fellow church members, being able to defend the church or defend the neighborhood or defend the community. And God forbid it ever gets to the point, but if it did ever get to the point where our military turned on us and started attacking our people, and frankly, let's be honest, folks, if you read history, that is the way of the world. That does happen. We hope it never happens in the United States, and we hope that this purge of our military is not a step in that direction. But if it ever did, I guarantee you the American people, there's enough of the American people armed and trained and ready to defend that it would be a real difficult thing for the American government to do. And they know that, and that's part of what keeps them from doing that. I don't say that as some conspiracy guy. I say that as a student of history, as just an objective observer of history In fact, I wish we had more time, Brad. I give you quote after quote of the founding fathers saying in fact, Joseph Story said it this way, Supreme Court Justice in the early days. He said it's a strong moral check against the arbitrary power and usurpation of government. That's what happens whenever you have an armed citizenry.
Wow. Well, listen, I mean, again, we've talked about it a million times in front of a lot of people, and we're going to do it again here in Texas here in a few weeks. If you have that clip or that link, do whatever magic has to be done to get it on my Facebook page. So, because the podcast is watched a lot after this live event, and it's shared a lot. But I'd love to get anybody in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Texas, obviously, which is huge, Louisiana, in Oklahoma. Did I mention that? Come on out, see the Comedy and Constitution tour with God's Comedy Brad Stine and America's Constitution coach Rick Green. And I believe Colonel Allen West is going to be at some of these, and maybe a few other folks. Yeah. So come on out. This is two guys amongst millions of other patriotic Americans who love America, who love God, who love their country, who want to defend it, try to give us marching orders, try to give you some inspiration, try to teach you what can be done. That we aren't giving this up sitting down. We're trying to do something. You're going to enjoy it. Bring your family, bring your kids, bring your sons, bring your daughters. Let's remember America and let's fight. We're still here. It's not over yet. So let's still believe that God is in control, and he'll give us one more shot at a third great awakening if we would simply humble ourselves and believe that maybe we need to let God back on the throne and get the Constitution back where it belongs as that thing which rules our country. Thank you, America's Constitution coach Rick Green, brother. Love to have you. Can't wait to see you in a couple weeks. And I'm sure again.
God bless you, brother. I appreciate what you do, man. Thanks for speaking truth. And Karen Boyd, one of your fans out there, saying, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. She's right on. God bless you, man. Have a good night.
You got it. Can you put me on real quick, Wyatt? Well, folks, thank you so much for spending some time with hang on. You got me on? You got my button? I need a button. He needs a button.
There you go.
There we go. And Mike.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you very much for sticking around. It was a little long, but I knew it was a little longer because I wanted to give you guys a chance to ask questions. I thought it might interest you. But you can see what we're doing. We do have this big tour coming up. Keep in mind, go to bradstine.com. That will let you know where I'm going to be in Texas and around the country. I've got other shows I've been booked out throughout the year. If you're a church, if you're a conservative group, if you're a fundraiser for a Christian school, if you're a fundraiser for I don't care what kind of school it is. You just want to give good quality education to people. Bring me in. If you're a pro-life group, bring me in. I'm doing these things all over this nation. It's my ministry. It's what I believe. It's what I stand for. I'm going to continue to fight for freedom, first for my faith in my belief that Jesus is God. That's what I gave my life to. That's what I'll die doing. But in that, I'm taught the principles of how to defend and bring justice to a nation, especially a free nation. As long as we're still here, let's fight for our right to be free and to have our liberties. And it's not going to be easy, folks, but it's worth it. This country has gone this far, and people still trying to bang the doors and get in, so there must be something here that must remain because people who are in much worse states than us are trying to get in. God bless you once again for coming in. Look forward to more interviews down the road, especially live interviews. And always leave comments if you want to donate and help me build these live events like with Rick and other things. If you want to be part of this and part of this ministry that I'm doing, a missionary to America and defending this nation and our faith in public, just say so. I'll give you the link and you can donate. It's a 501c3 ministry, so it is a tax deductible. Thank you. God bless you. I will see you next week. Thank you, Wyatt, for being part of the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
He just woke up. God bless you, folks. I'll see you next week.